So pour yourself a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the discussion tonight. We're going to do a deep dive on adventure design, and we got a really great guest here tonight as well. So I'm Danny Grimes. I'm a professional GM at Gen Con, a graphic designer, a train maker, a cartographer, and I'm the MC around here. Right, I don't know where they are because I don't watch the stream, but Matt, Casey Rift, owns and runs Cobalt Con and the Blackwood Society, and we are currently running a Kickstarter. We love your support. He'll talk a little bit about that in a little while. Matt, what are you drinking?
Well, I feel like this is becoming my personal drink of the show, but I brought back Caber Toss this you wee lad.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
A local favorite from the Mad Swede in Boise.
Right on. Okay. Next up, Brian. I see that guy at every convention. Berg. He is an author, a game designer, and he's the owner-operator of Total Party Kill Games. You've probably seen a lot of stuff, including 5th edition Options, just a super kick-ass book that he wrote and put out a while back now. What are you drinking, Brian?
I've been eagerly awaiting the Rogue Dead Guy Ale for this very moment.
That's the sound of victory. And last but not least, and I am tempting fate that my video will strangely cut out if our tech guy hears me ripping on him, Chief Reject on the Praetor's Rejects Twitch channel.
Hello, folks. Jimmy Duffy here.
I'm just
Hey, Frozen.
He runs a lot of games on this channel, sometimes like every night a week. It's insane. This guy is like it's insane. Great game every Friday. Lost Minds of Fandelver. People who are into 5th edition got to check it out. It's really good. And he keeps this Twitch stream up and running and manages all the tech and blah 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 blah. So
marginal.
Yeah. So I will now introduce tonight's guest. Robert Jimmy Schwalb is a writer, game designer, and game developer who you probably know from Shadow of the Demon Lord most recently, but he's also had a long contribution to 3 editions of D&D, the Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game, and one of my faves, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So welcome to the couch, Rob.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be here.
Good to have you.
Right on. And I don't know Rob that well, but he's this guy.
He found him under a bridge.
Yeah.
That's right. Probably so.
He had some dice on him. He said he'd be on the show.
That's right, Steven. This fucking guy. Yeah.
The Schwalb to you.
So when we try to kick off every show, sometimes more luckily than others, with some kind of like founding questions about how our guests have gotten into gaming and how they've gotten into writing or producing, whatever they do, whatever aspect of the hobby that they're involved in. So, Rob, please give us a little bit of an idea of like what brought you into this hobby, and then maybe how you converted that into like being a professional.
Well, I guess I got into the hobby like a lot of folks do. I jumped into it at an early age. When my neighbor sold me an adventure module for $0.25, and I kind of unpacked that eventual. It was a Rahazia by Tracy and Laura Hickman. Because I didn't have the rules for D&D, the game I had always wanted to play, I just decided to build a game from what I could deconstruct from the adventure module, and that was fun. And I had a group of about 18 people on my 6th grade playground, and we did that for a while. And then years later, I ran a bunch of epic type bullshit campaigns. My mom hated D&D, and so I had to learn how to play other games. So I played Twilight 2000, Marvel Superheroes, and GURPS, and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and anything else I could. And then I guess I went to college after a stint as a McDonald's manager, which I could always go back to. And
you established this earlier, fully qualified.
Fully qualified. The only course left to me, you bastards, is Hamburger U. And I will go there and I will conquer. Anyway, so I did all that, and then I sold games, and I sold liquor. I sold men's clothes and appliances and electronics and hardwood flooring and ceramic tile. went to college, went back to college, got a degree, and thought I was going to write a novel. And then it turns out that the novel was not going to happen. And instead, I answered an open call, and I've been sucked into this goddamn hobby ever since.
Wow, I thought you were going to tell the stories about being captured by gypsies, but that was
Oh, wait. I gave you the real story.
Yes.
The really super real story is that I'm not really a human being.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
I'm a sentient tumor clinging to the back of Penn and Teller. You notice you never see their backs at the same time. That's because I am the connecting tissue.
Wow. Yeah, see, that's much more what I suspected.
Yeah.
I think it was really great though that you ran down the long list of like selling things, because I think that's a good aspiration for people who want to get into this industry. You have to be realistic. One job is not going to be enough. You're going to need at least 4 or 5, and then you can get into it, right?
Yeah. And then you can also develop a substance abuse problem just like me.
Yeah, exactly. I think all
Got that one nailed.
So, I wanted to also kind of when you did that open call. When was that? That was for Wizards?
No, it was for a small D20 company from years and years ago. This is probably 02, so 17 years ago.
Wow. Okay, so you just picked that up, and what did you do? I mean, what was the first thing you produced?
I did a book about witches, and then I did a book about barbarians,
And they're not in business anymore.
They're still
did I
around,
say
I
that?
think. Yeah, they're still around. Yeah, but I mean, that would be very apt. I'm sure I contributed to their fall from grace. But I mean, you got to remember that when I got into the business, this was early D20 boom, and so that bubble was continuing to blow up, and there was more demand for product than there were writers to produce. And so what I did was I went to EN World, which was back then Eric Noah's D&D page, and I scoured that for publishers, and I read every submission guidelines I could find. A couple of jobs came out of that, though, so I guess I went to Origins in 03 and kicked open some doors. I did Grimm for Fantasy Flight Games, the D20 Horizons Grimm, which was a really small book. I did the Unholy Warriors Handbook for, Green Ronin Publishing, which led to the Book of Fiends, which then eventually led to my developer position with Green Ronin for a number of years, which then led to a contract position with Wizards, which then led to me right now here on the precipice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, coming up through those small publishers too must have been interesting when you finally arrived at this later stage and realized you were going to become one of those small publishers.
Well, it's different now though than it was then, because I was working with AEG and Fantasy Flight Games and Paradigm Concepts, Green Ronin, Mongoose Publishing, and a bunch of others. And even by today's standards, all these companies are probably bigger than I think most of the little guys are right now.
Right.
My company is me plus contractors, and we've released. I think this last week we've just crossed over our 202nd product on Drive-Thru RPG.
Wow.
And that's just the nature of the business, right? I mean, and doing what Monty Cook does or what Chris and Nicole and Hal do over at Green Ronin, they were able to survive. Chris and Nicole and Hal, of course, were able to survive the D20 bursting of that bubble and continue on. Monty was certainly able to carve out his own space, and so have other people. But a lot of those guys who were in the early days just aren't around anymore, or they're doing different kinds of things, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to consider the uphill, the realistic uphill battle there is. There's only so many eyeballs.
Yep.
I've heard some horror stories about some of the early publishers in gaming who got royally boned by the distribution angle. Suddenly they had to take back 20K copies of some title that didn't sell, and they're like, "Oh, we're out of business." Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, there was shortly after I was hired by shortly after Green Ronin hired me, I was doing their D20 line development work while Steve Kenson took their Mutants and Masterminds, and I was kind of focused on Black Company and a few other things, and Steve was completely focused on Blue Rose and again M&M. Our distributor, who just completely collapsed and sucked a couple $100,000 out of the company. And so there were a couple of months there that was like, well, I'm not sure if anybody else are going to have a job, because you can't take $200,000 out of a company or more and be expected to survive.
Right. Yeah, at a certain scale, that's certainly true.
Yeah.
Well, I guess at any scale, really, 200 grand is no joke. So, in no particular order, we've got some questions I think will just serve as conversation starters. And but I'm mainly, I guess, interested in Rob. And hey, Rob, if you can stick around for the rest of the show, you're welcome to join us at the roundtable thing too. You don't have to take off afterwards. Feel free to chill. Matt, why don't you just ask that first topic right there? I think that's right in line.
Oh, there we go.
In today's political climate?
It's in the notes, Matt. It's right there in the notes.
Yeah, I got you. Hey, I'm a professional. Where's my hashtag?
Trained professional.
Yeah. So my first question then is, when we're talking about developing adventures today, and I guess things have changed over the last 20 years, and not only the content itself, but the mass audience. The audience has grown significantly in role-playing games. So how do you go about writing stuff how do you measure acceptability when you're writing stuff for your fan base? If you're trying to grab new people, for example, how do you measure what is and is not acceptable when you go to print? Or do you care?
Is that thrown to me, or is it thrown to somebody else?
That's you.
That's you.
That's me? All right. Well,
Sorry, I forgot to start that with Rob.
Sure. No, it's no problem. All right. So, like, Shadow the Demon Lord is kind of like, all right, if you get an adventure for Shadow the Demon Lord and you're expecting happy unicorns and a non-immolated leprechaun, or whatever, that'd be like going to the grocery store and buying a can of tuna fish and being pissed off that it doesn't contain beef Wellington.
Where's my mercury?
Right, it's right there on the tin. So in my case, Demon Lord kind of already says we're going to push some boundaries as far as what's comfortable or not, and that's kind of the thing. Now, there are things that I won't do. Like, I have very, very strict rules about where I will not go. No child sexual assault. We don't kill animals, and no, that's it. So those are the two things that we don't do. But we had Fine Country Folk, which was an adventure that came out for the previous Occult Philosophy adventure. And I loved this adventure because I was so disgusted with myself while I was working on it that I knew that there was going to be at least 70 people out there somewhere that would have the same level of appreciation I did for the filth that I was throwing up onto the page. But then the Cabaret of the Grotesque, which is another adventure, which is the same kind of thing, but different. I guess what, in these adventures, if I was doing a D&D adventure, on the other hand, it would be different, right? In the D&D adventure, I wouldn't have a group of cultists torturing their drugged prisoner in front of a crowd of demon-possessed townsfolk who are getting whipped up into a sexual frenzy and then have this vast orgy once the person's dead, and the whole thing kind of dials back down, and then everyone distributes back to their places because the demons are at least content for 15 minutes before their erectile dysfunction pill kicks back in again. That's something I would do for D&D, but that's something I would certainly do for Demon Lord.
Right.
That's not answering your question at all, but
no, it's good. Basically, yeah. The product speaks for itself. The product speaks for itself, right? So the disclaimer is right on the cover, I guess, is what we're saying.
Is it the product or the brand?
You're not limited to one type of adventure. I mean, you can make other things for other systems that are vastly different, right? I mean, you worked on Numenera. That's probably as far away from Shadow of the Demon Lord in terms of like the purpose of the game.
But in that adventure, I did actually introduce hell to the world of Numenera.
Okay, fair enough.
But I mean, there's also, and I'm a weird case because I think I have a reputation for writing things that make people feel a little squeamish. And that's kind of, even when I was working on D&D, I would always push the line, but not to a way that would try to drive off the audience. It's just I like to kind of feel out those boundaries. Because I think that it's good. I mean, we go to horror movies for catharsis. We don't go to horror movies to be brutalized. Some of us do, but there's a difference between Hereditary, which is a genuinely upsetting film, and Antichrist, which is a deeply upsetting therapy-inducing film. And you've got to be able to know where that particular line is between the two products.
Wow, that's a good comparison. Lars von Trier is.
Also, Hereditary is an awesome movie. I love that one.
One of my top 5.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So to follow on that, I guess, and ask a further question about it, like you're writing what you want to write, but it's not solely what you want to write. I mean, you're thinking a little bit about your audience. You're just not letting that audience dictate necessarily the specific content. It's more like you're buying Shadows of the Demon Lord. You know what you're going to get, and you write to that. And then you've got other options to write other stuff other places, right?
Sure. Like I'm working on a game called Shadow of the Mad Wizard, which takes a Demon Lord engine and it runs it through a filter that makes it more palatable for a broader audience. And the reason why I'm doing it is because I think the engine that powers Demon Lord is good. And I know that I've had a lot of customers have come to me and said that they would like to be able to play this game with their kids. And, and there's some difficulty in navigating a game where you have spells called Hole of Glory and Hateful Defecation and Desire's End and a raft of other ones where you could expect to fight a rampaging mob of dick monsters that'll come barreling down a corridor at you. So that's not going to be good for groups that involve, 8 to 12-year-old kids.
No, really?
Not for all of them. I mean,
I think that's really why. I think it's wise of you to recognize that, Rob.
Right. So Shadow of the Mad Wizard is more of a mainstream style fantasy game, but it's still going to have stuff that makes me giggle and chuckle. So it's going to have it'll have a little darker edge, but it's certainly something you can play with kids. And for adventures I write for that one, it's not going to be about you might square off against cultists, or you might encounter a demon here or there, but it's not going to be any darker or more sinister than you would find in the average Lovecraft story, which I think any 12-year-old kid would be able to read.
Well, not the original. I mean, it's too dry.
Well, it's too dry. You got to put a little butter on that.
There's no Minecraft in it. No.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Well, maybe what I should do is just do adventures that are just pictures, so that they can kind of. No, that's way too cynical.
Sarcasm strong with this one,
but appropriate, maybe applicable.
Yeah.
So, Rob, during my day job, I work brand management for a video game company. So I think that you are very clever, and whether you'll admit it or not, you know your audience, right? You know that people gain enjoyment from playing and reading your games. And I was thinking too of like your branding, if you will, of Monday is particularly genius. D Monday, right? Come on now. Genius, right? But I don't know if anyone else caught on to that. I mean, not only is it great branding for your company, but also you're carving out a day of the week where you release product and not everyone else does. So you're gaining much more exposure on this particular day than probably anybody else. And it's particularly brilliant.
Thank you.
Yes. Was it as cut and dry as that, or did you just think that was clever?
I'm not even sure if. I think I don't even know if it might have been a fan who said something, or I did it, or my layout person did it. But it was just so to kind of go back. It's like I talked about the fact that I kind of built a reputation for being Dr. Evil of the gaming industry, and I felt like with Demon Lord, it was an opportunity for me to kind of capitalize on that, because I'm actually not a terrible person. I mean, I like to think I am a little terrible, but not like super terrible. But I am not. I will not flinch when it comes to describing situations and scenes that are just awful. So being able to plant my flag on Mondays because it just happens to give me, just add 2 letters to it, just seems really, natural.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
The other thing is like I'm not sure if I know my audience or my audience just lucked. I just happen to find my audience,
Mhm.
which might be closer to the truth. Where
Finding your tribe.
yeah, I think I just kind of put myself out there, and I know that not that Demon Lord didn't appeal to everybody who backed the first Kickstarter, but I have cultivated a really strong following of diehard fans, and that's great. But it does, yeah. There are ups and downs to that, though, right? I mean,
You absolutely had me when I'm rolling on my background chart and I'm playing a goblin and I was the sex slave of a hag for 1d4 years or something silly like that. I talk about that all the time.
You do.
But it stuck with me, right? And so if a random background element for a game stuck with me and I talk about it all the time, well, that's brilliant marketing too, right? So we're on to you, Schwalb.
all right, well, I'm nervous.
Well, two things, Rob, I just want to add in there. One, I've known you for not probably more than about an hour and a half, and I would say you're semi-terrible already. So
Oh, wait.
you're working on it. It's good. You're going in the right direction. You're trending.
I'm ugly. I'm old. I'm filled with self-loathing.
And second of all, I get the sense that you're like the reason people like your depictions of evil and terribleness and horror and is because you do it with that cocked eyebrow of like it's fun, like you're delighting in it. And I think when people play a game, no matter how terrible it is, if the person running it is like, it makes it really compelling. And I think your game has a lot of tongue in cheek to it. Shadows does.
Sure, and that was one of the things too. Is that there, for as awful as the things that I will explore in this game, and I mean, I have done some things that are probably regrettable in Exquisite Agony and Hunger of the Void, and in fact, just Men of Gog that just came out a little while ago. I do it, but I do it with a big grin because it's really funny. I mean, it's funny to watch people get all nervous over just bullshit, right? And it's like, sure, Ashfur Call, the Witch King, his story parallels the story of Christ. I did it on purpose, and it's to make you feel nervous. It's to make you feel kind of, oh, what the fuck am I reading? And then, or like the fact that Demon Lord is actually the only god in the entire cosmology of the universe that I created. Well, of course he's going to be God, because who else is God going to be? He's going to be the power of worlds.
Right.
And I built up to that slowly, and it's upsetting. I mean, I remember when Exquisite Agony came out, and people were like, "The new god's a devil." I can't use that in my games. Coward. Use that in your game.
Well, what have you, with the development and your design work, the things that you do, what have you noticed about how you do your work with online now and all the popularity that has come aboard with the gaming and that platform?
So I'm super supportive of anybody who's running live plays or streaming their stuff. And we've had a bunch of games that have come up using the Demon Lord engine. We do Rob's Basement as a weekly thing, and we start off with Shadow of the Demon Lord, but because I have a little bit of, I don't know, I get bored pretty easily. We're kind of trawling through a bunch of different games. So we're doing right now Call of Cthulhu and on one week, and then we're doing Advanced Fighting Fantasy on the other week. We'll do probably a special one-off for Punk Apocalyptic for the ongoing Kickstarter. And then I think we'll probably do Lex, Occultum, or Pathfinder 2 for Steven, or something else. So we're always kind of cycling through stuff. And these games are really irreverent because they kind of match my preferred style of play, which is beard, pretzels, everyone's laughing, having a good time. We're not trying to tell the grand story. We're just entertaining ourselves, because if we're not having fun, then
What's the point?
What's the fucking point?
Yeah, the entertaining ourselves comment is great because it is a group effort. Everybody's entertaining each other.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say that some of the people that walked away from your table after KoboldCon, tables after KoboldCon, had a blast.
That's awesome.
Probably the majority of comments I received were on your game specifically. So yeah, it was great.
Were there any negative ones?
No. And that's, I guess, kind of where I was getting at with knowing your audience earlier is, I would be nervous, of course, and you're used to it with given the genre that you've picked with Shadow of the Demon Lord, but I would be nervous not knowing who I was at my table. But I think they just kind of know, they just understand that already, right? They know what they're getting into. So no, there weren't any negative comments at all.
Good. Because I take a lot of pride in trying to read my tables.
Sure.
And I will use gentle feelers to kind of ascertain what their limits are. It's like it's kind of like an alien probe. You just put the tip in to start. You don't go all the way in.
Yeah,
just the tip to start, and then see how far you can take it.
I've kind of lost all my hashtags. Like they've just none of them matter anymore. You know?
Yeah. I think Rob just invented like 5 or 6. We're gonna.
He did.
He did. That's
Adventure design is like an anal probe.
It really is.
Rob, that's the tip. Hashtag,
Okay,
that's
so
the tip.
I'm going to go highbrow, I guess, a little bit with my question. We've had, not to name drop, but we've had
Go ahead.
John Messenger on, who's a writer, straight up fiction writer.
Sounds like name dropping.
Jim Pinto, Wolfgang, all these guys talk about different aspects of creating content. So at the risk of lobbing 3 heavily charged grenades into the arena to be disputed, storytelling, fiction writer, or adventure designer, like, what do you feel is like a reasonable description, or what is the description of what you do? What is that process, and how is it different maybe from just storytelling or just writing?
That back to me?
Yeah,
Yes, all these
Okay.
questions are for you.
I think you're right.
Double
Kick-
check, 'cause I don't want to suck up all the air out of the room. I want to be
I don't
sure.
know.
It's all for you. It's all yours.
No, I think that adventure writing is very different from writing stories and fiction, because your job's not to tell players what they're doing, and your job's really not to tell what the game master what he's doing. Your job is to present enough information that the game master can construct a story using the aid and input from the players to create a memorable experience for everyone involved. I think the hardest part about adventure design is realizing that and stopping yourself from doing the bullshit that has contaminated a lot of our hobby as far as adventure writing goes, and getting down to the bare bones. I mean, people will rail against 4th edition for its overly mechanical design, but for fuck's sake, I mean, it's like it's your job as the dungeon master, game master, to spin the story out with the aid of your players.
Yep.
We're giving you the tools to do so. And I think 4th edition, for all of its warts, probably did the best job of any as far as getting out of the way of the game master. And I know that's controversial, and fuck it, who cares? The point is that my biggest frustration when it comes to writing adventure is that I don't want to waste words. If I build an elaborate story where I've got 15 different plot choices, so the players can have the illusion of getting to freely do whatever the fuck they want, and then I have all these different branching arcs, and then as a game master who just happens to have maybe above average group, they get through a third of them, then what do you do with the rest of the 2/3 of your stuff?
Right.
And why am I selling a $70 adventure thing where only people are going to use like 6 hours out of it? It's bullshit. And that's kind of what, and I don't want to, going back to the Demon Lord thing, is like, Demon Lord adventures are short because they give you the shit that you need to have, and they let you, as a dungeon master, game master, referee, keeper, whatever the fuck you want to call yourself, make up the connective tissue. And I think that's crucial. And I think, and I'm still not good at adventure writing. I'm not good at it. I'm, in fact, just as terrible as everybody fucking else is. And because
You clearly have not seen my writing.
Yeah. Feel good in this company.
We're all struggling with the same problem, which is, how do I tell a good story or rather, how do I create the tools to tell a good story?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think too, the history of this hobby is publishing of printed books. So you get this idea that the book is printed, stories are written that way. There's all this long trail of history of us writing the lore up front, because people want to read the lore to get hooked on the idea, when really adventures, I always think, should be presented as kits. Here's a bunch of pieces, fuck the book, here's a box with stuff in it, open this box up, figure it out. And but I mean, most people don't want that. I guess they just want to read a book. I don't know.
Well, but it's a complicated thing too, right? You look at Shadows over Bogenhofen, one of the greatest, arguably the greatest Warhammer Fantasy role play adventure ever written, and that's put in a toolbox, right? It's more than a kit. There is a plot. There are plenty of places to explore. It's a well-realized community, and it's hard to run. A Master Nyarlathotep is the same kind of thing. It's a really hard thing to run, and I think these are all really good steps on realizing what the audience needs in order to spin out those great experiences. But like, I look at my earliest encounters with D&D adventure design, and it's not stuff that I wrote, but rather what we played through. Tomb of Horrors, for all the shit that's leveled at that adventure, created some of the most memorable experiences at our table because of just the sheer lethality and how we reacted to it. We think about obviously the Sphere of Annihilation. We think about the multi-armed gargoyle. We think about countering the demi-lich, but a lot of it is, what clues can we pick out of these drawings on the walls, and how will that help us get to this next thing? Or in Temple of Elemental Evil, what drama arises when we are running out of food and water and we're balls deep in this horrific environment? So, I mean, and that's kind of, I guess, what I'm trying to chase after, is that these are frameworks. If you ran Temple of Elemental Evil or Tomb of Horrors by the book, where you're doing read aloud text in Temple of Elemental Evil, or you're improvising text based on Tomb of Horrors, but you're doing it by the book, it's boring.
Right.
But when you use it as a skeleton, it's sexy.
So, Rob, here's a question for you. There's probably tons of people who watch this show who would love to be aspiring adventure writers. How do you get past all the mental roadblocks that every writer suffers? And how do you regimen yourself to be a full-time writer?
Well, for adventure writing, the first thing I do is I always decide where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I have my final scene in place, I then think about how I want to start. And then I come up with 3 to 5 avenues to get from start to finish. I will use tricks and tools like OneNote, or Post-it notes, or I will go to a bar and have lots of schniblets of paper, or I will do whatever the fuck I can in order to try to organize my thoughts into whatever it is that I need to get from start to finish, and provide enough avenues that all kind of sync up and work together. One of the big things, though, is that because I realize that there are opportunities for wasted words and wasted cool scenes, is to make sure that every element that is included has use beyond the adventure, or can be repurposed within the adventure to do something else. The Demon Lord adventures are different because we just give you a snapshot and we rely on you to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But yeah, typically it's going to be something cool in every scene. You never put this is an empty room in a dungeon.
Right.
You should never do that. I remember working on a late 4th edition adventure that went back to Greyhawk, and I was doing development work on an adventure for another designer, and he had a couple of empty rooms, and I was like, this is a wasted opportunity. And so what I did was I said that if characters search this room, they will find a loose floorboard. In the floorboard, they will find a dozen fingers with yellow bows tied around them. This was eventually, but I did explain why it was there.
Right.
It was eventually cut from the adventure, which I was very but I used that thing as an illustration in Shadow of the Demon Lord. And then you look in that book, you'll find a box drawer that's got a bunch of severed fingers with little yellow bows tied on them. And it doesn't matter why it's there, because the players are going to come up with whatever fucking reason they want. Right. And if you're a good referee, you will capitalize on their own imagination and then spin a cool story out of that.
Absolutely.
Was that a good answer or was it terrible?
That's fantastic.
No, that was great. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I can't tell.
Severed fingers with yellow bows coming up.
I've been drinking for
I'm gonna
6
make
hours and 41 minutes, so I have no idea what's going on.
Well, I was just gonna. I think that it's real. The conversation that we're having about adventure design is really important, only because so many people have a story to tell. They want to write lore. They've come up with a cool idea, but what so many publishers that I've talked to anyway have said, that's not the stuff they're really most interested in. Is the 30 pages of fluff you've created. They're really interested in the core concept of the adventure. And I keep thinking, I want to open an adventure, and the very first page says, dude, in this adventure, you're going to get to do this and this and this and this. And it sells it like an event. Like, I'm going to be the ringmaster of a 3-ring circus. Here's some rules I'll get to use.
Kind of are.
You know, well, this particular 3-ring circus is a little bit harder to manage than an adventure. But I hearken to that kind of experience. I think that's what a lot of people want. And the idea of the book might be something that we have to move beyond to be able to create something that's almost more like it comes in a box, like a board game, and it's got stuff in it for you to create with. It has books, of course, but it has other pieces in there, props and such. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, when I was not doing game design and I was just playing and running games, I remember getting Monty Cook's Paladin in Hell and looking through that book and just being blown away by all the cool scenes that I could explore. Probably my all-time favorite adventure from second edition, though, is without a doubt Return to Tomb of Horrors, because Bruce Cordell is my favorite adventure writer.
Yes, very good.
He's just the best, and because everything is considered. There's not wasted bullshit. Like when you go Beard the Brine Dragon, there's this weird fucking dragon at the bottom of the tower that's submerged, and you're swimming through water that's freezing you to death. Oh, it's so good. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
I love you, Bruce.
Yeah. I love Bruce Cordell too. And I think like a great adventure design, if it pretty much hits all the beats that Big Trouble in Little China hits, you're going to have a great adventure, right? Because that's an adventure from start to finish with some story. Yeah. Well, that's all. Go ahead, Brian.
It wasn't too long ago that there was some controversy on the interwebs about how dare adventure writers put flavor text in modules. Okay. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Remember, not every person who picks up a role-playing game has been doing this for 30 years. And for those of us who have, guess what? We can paraphrase. We can take your ideas and roll with them. Like Rob said, he's giving us all these, scenes and elements for us to use as tools, not necessarily the complete railroad. Mm-hmm. So that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that point is super well taken. But isn't it really? What do you think, Rob? Should you have flavor text in modules where you describe things? Or should it be just...
I'm going to be controversial and say no, you shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
I think flavor text is good, and but I always read it ironically. If I see flavor text appear in an adventure, I will always read it. I will always read it in as obnoxious. I mean, and it ruins everything because I'm an asshole. But I will do it. I will do it every time. But if I realize that if you stripped out all the flavor text that shows up in Castle Ravenloft, you don't need a hardback book.
Right.
You just have here's the shit that's going on in this room, and that's all you got to say. There are 3 ghouls, and one of the ghouls is eating a child's head. That's all you got to say. And your game master, dungeon master, referee, keeper, whatever the fuck you call yourself, can go with that. I think that at a certain point we have to raise our audience up and say, you are good. Whether you are scared or not, we could do one product with read aloud text, but we don't need every product to have read aloud text. If that makes sense. But now I say that, I think I need to have a Shadow of the Demon Lord adventure with read aloud text.
I like read alouds as long as it's something that somebody's saying in the game.
Oh, but why?
I don't mind if it's dialogue ideas. You know,
But-
the headman of the village
but-
might tell you this or that.
But my fear is that if you start scripting out what an NPC is going to say, that means that you have to, as a game master, you start thinking about, how do I get this scripted information into the conversation? And that's even harder. If you just say with bullets, that you say, this NPC knows that Auntie Margaret has a hard time peeing because she has a calcified fetus growing in her belly that's pressed down in her bladder. And that the reason why, and that's why she's so upset. And if you can find the salve of stone dissolving, which is owned by the knife sharpener of Zardoz, then that's what the NPC knows. And then you give like a couple of beats, like this NPC has tremors because he's not drinking right now. And he also has a wandering eye for gnomes and halflings. And then you do something else like that. Then the game master's got all the stuff he needs without saying, well, I do believe that I have heard from one of my neighbors that Auntie Mame has a calcified fetus growing in her belly. And so you don't have to force that. You could just let it come naturally.
Just let it happen.
On the next Praetor's Rejects, you'll see that.
Yeah. Okay, that's a perfect time to talk about this segment. Like, okay, hard cut at calcified fetus, and we're gonna do a quick station ID, and then we're gonna roll into our kind of topical segment. So maybe we can get Rob to stay. Will you stay around, Rob?
Sure.
You got more toilet wine, right?
But I got a whole toilet full of toilet wine.
Oh, toilet full of toilet wine. That's more toilet wine than anyone needs in one evening. So getting started on our topic for tonight, which is adventure design in the widest sense. Matt was just mentioning off channel that we were kind of like going into the topics already. So why don't we kind of recap where we were there, Matt, and why don't we go ahead and just continue that conversation with the question you have for the next segment.
Yeah, so that actually flows very well. So formatting, my topic for the group is how do you format adventures when designing it? And I specifically was going to go to text box, flavor text. But since we've already kind of beat that horse, how do you go about laying out the adventure? I mean, old school, one of my biggest complaints about old school adventures, and one of the funniest moments probably in our gaming group, was you read the flavor text robotically as the GM, blah, blah, blah. There's a room with a treasure chest, and you see the walls are 10 feet high. The ceiling is in darkness, and there's a red dragon in the corner, you know, that as he reads through the excerpt at the end, which is not included in the flavor text at all. So you get through this whole long paragraph, and then, oh yeah, by the way, there's a red dragon. And so how do you go about formatting your adventure when you're writing it to make it easier for game masters? And we'll start with, how about Brian? Brian's a pro by now.
Shit.
At formatting.
God, that's a good one though. So I always like action and excitement in the stuff that I'm writing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be combat related. I want something fun, something memorable, something that's propelling the game forward. Does that help? Does that kind of... Sandals. Those were sandals. Kids watch.
What does that look like though? I mean, so I guess if we get into how the adventure itself is literally laid out in format. So do you have a big long immersion text at the beginning? Are you assuming that the players know where they're going to just put it in their campaign?
So unlike Rob, I guess, I don't know, but I meet a lot of people who've never really played games before and who are looking at your product and are like, well, I don't know, I've never run a game before, but I'd really kind of like to. And, so I feel like maybe I write for a little bit different audience. But at the same time, I want to give them the tools that they need to have confidence in themselves, that they can run a game, right? and yet at the same time give the veteran GMs those nuggets of juicy awesomeness that they need to do something amazing that their players will remember forever, right? And so you want your story to be awesome, but it's like Rob mentioned, it's not just the game master's story. It's not just the author's story. It's not just the player's story, right? It is a culmination of the three.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of feel like I'm not necessarily a fan of reading flavor text, but I have, maybe it's a insecurity that people are not going to be able to interpret what I wanted to put down on when I'm trying to get into the adventure. So I include as much text as I can to make sure that I kind of cage the game master's head around what's going on. So
yeah.
I can guarantee you, Rob would hate,
dude.
One of my adventures.
He's gonna hate everything. It sounds like.
Your example of the red dragon being the last thing that someone mentioned in the flavor text. There are legendary authors who are very, very guilty of this. So,
yeah, for sure. Rob, what about you? How do you? So, when we're talking about the short Shadow of the Demon Lord adventure, how are you laying that out? So we got bullet points, but how does that?
No, I'll put it in. I'll put it in standard paragraph flow, core text, but I have 3 rules as far as describing any scene that you go into. If there's an obvious danger, reveal it. Then appeal to the player's senses. What do you smell, see, whatever. Think about and think carefully about what you remember from any given scene. Vision is important, but that's always going to be one of the things you're going to lean on. Smell is extremely important because you always remember it. Think about the last time you smelled a bag of rotting potatoes. You'll never get rid of that smell, right? Or discovering the unfortunate fates of a bag of onions left in the back of a cupboard. And then you peel that gooey mess off the back and the odor that comes wafting over you. Or when your cat shits on the floor because he's sick or she's sick and you have to clean it up and there's all sorts of weird stuff in there. You get all those kind of sensory things, right? And then the last thing I do is give you a sense of place. I'll set this up. So imagine, audience, you're walking into what is obviously a temple of just horrific evil. And you know this because you've seen scenes of such debauchery as to make you sweat. And I'm not saying that your characters are, but I'm just saying the experience so far has made you all clammy. Moist, one might say. And you open this door, and inside you see that there is a rather corpulent fiend of some mammoth proportions who is straining from his nether regions to push out a glistening sack of fluid and solids that are all squirming about with a cluster of eyeballs that are pressing against the tissue. And the smell that comes wafting off this thing is one of rancid ham. Like where it's turning green, like it's peeling off the lid. And then you look around this room and you see in this room there's a vaulted ceiling and there's an upside down cross and it's been somehow turned upside down by some mad cultist dedicated to Satan. And that you can get from just like 3 bullets, right? There's a big demon taking a shit and pooping out monsters. The smell is ham, rancid ham, and the sense of place is a defiled temple. And that's all you got to do in order to give the audience. Now, there's one thing I will never, ever, 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 ever do is tell the players what they feel. Never, ever, 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 ever tell the players what they feel. It's your job as a both game master and as a writer to build that in a way that the audience absorbs it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that. That's
we
great.
Absorbed it. Oh yeah. We did.
You like that?
Yeah.
But Bob, can you tell how we feel right now?
Never gonna get the rancid hem smell out of my clothes. I absorbed the hell out of it.
The
All right,
rancid.
Danny, that's going to be tough to top.
Me?
What about you, Danny? Yes, Danny. What about you?
I feel like when I write, I tend to write as if I am writing for an audience, even though to date I've pretty much written my own stuff for me. But I try to think about it professionally, and I try to write like when I have to write convention rounds for people who are going to be running it, who I'm not necessarily going to know, I do a 1-page sheet at the very beginning that just says it's all pro advice type stuff. There's no beginners, because beginners love pro advice and pros love pro advice. So you don't have to ever write for basic people. Everybody who wants to run a game wants to run it as well as they can. So everybody wants the best stuff. And then I set the stakes. I just say, this is what's going to happen if you do nothing. And I write that as like one sentence. Like, this demon is going to shit out monsters until the fucking cows come home, unless whatever. And then I set out like what the mood of the place might be, but I don't really describe a lot of like specifics. And usually that's enough for me, I would think, to create like the essential parts of setting the scene. People know what there is to lose. They've got a rough idea of like the air of the place. And then I basically just list a few generalities about the place that people can describe if they want. Like, I don't ever do the room size or any of that stuff. I say it's a big room. If people give a shit about how big it is, they'll ask me. If they want to know if there's, I say there's a dripping sound. I don't say it's water. I say there's a dripping sound. Or I leave it all really ambiguous, because quite frankly, I want the players to go, I bet it's slime. I bet it's slime dripping in that corner. I'm like, fuck yeah, it is. I never thought of that, but that's a great idea. It's slime, and now it's all over you. So I leave a lot of it in the players' hands to tell me what's terrifying them. I write a lot of horror stuff too. So I want to know what's scaring them, and then it's easy for me to just turn the dials up. So
Sure.
I would include some random charts or maybe a table or two that says, if the players go in direction A, have more of this creepy shit happen to them. If they go in direction B, give them some clues and some additional creepy shit. I keep it real loose. And generally, I think you could write most adventures on 2 pages. If you didn't have to worry about the source book material and recreating monster stat blocks and shit like that. 2 to 4 pages, you could write a really good 4-hour game. Probably you could write a 3-story arc, 12-hour arc on 4 pages.
Nice. Yeah. And Rob, you're getting a lot. I don't know if you're watching the Twitch chat, but you're getting quite a bit of love.
Oh, that's sweet. I love you
Twitch
too.
They're sending you porn. We gave them your address.
No, they're getting moist.
They're
They're moist.
They're getting
Because
moist.
my wife and I share a Facebook page. I'm kidding. We don't.
may or may not be tentacles. I'm not sure. Zode and Night Fallen both have been singing your praises from the rooftops. Jimmy,
Well, hail
I think you got a hail. There you go.
Another hill. What's up?
Moist crunchies. Moist crunchies.
That's right. Thanks, Ursa.
You're up, Jimmy. You're up, Jimmy.
What am I up for? Oh, no.
Your question. Your question.
I know my question. So, I'm not the writer in the group here, so go figure. But what we talk about with my segments is usually something in the virtual side. And when chatting, and we're talking about note taking, which is one of the features I think is underutilized on the virtual side, at least from some of the games that I have DM'd and played in. And so we're chatting in the Fantasy Ground setup, and Matt will slap me around because he'll bring up the Roll20 side. We try not to talk about that. And so the note sections we're trying to, in the adventure side, is the 2 spots in the Fantasy Grounds interface. One is the note section in the player character sheet, and the other note section, which is in the interface itself. And managing those for not in the GM using on the note side to record some of this text information that apparently we don't like in modules, because I have seen that I think it's kind of important. There's a mix there. What's that happy medium for some of those notes? Okay. Because our program, when we've talked about the inception of doing this, we were trying to help those who are trying to run games. We've seen lots of questions they want to ask, and we're trying not to get other people would slap them down like that's a stupid ass question. And we're going, no, we want to try to provide a platform to answer that. And so I think in the adventure size, sometimes like if we're more professional and you're comfortable in managing that game, then you only need a few things like Rob was saying. But then there's some of us, we will run a lot of the created modules. Well, that's what our focus is on. And so I don't mind some of that flavor. and it's given me enough, then I can build off of it. And I think that we can have a medium in there. And so I just want to say, but I think that as GMs and even the players, to use those sections in a virtual tabletop to put those extra pieces down about your character, because I know some of people are doing it at their tabletop games with their notepads and all that, but on your character and things that happen when you're playing the game, we'll go in there and jot that down, because you're going to be looking at it all the time. And same thing on the platform notes interface. The GM's put in his notes there to use it, and then you can share those, or the characters can actually create public documents so that they can start chatting down about what's going on in the adventure, and they can then share it with the group. And so you've got those extra things, remembering, because if you're not playing but once a week for a couple hours, a session, you're going to forget those sessions behind you, and they do it all the time. And I keep trying to push players to continue using that notes interface. So that's my tidbit there for the writing side.
That tidbit.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Thank you.
good.
Thank you.
Jimmy, if it makes
really
you feel any better.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say that's actually a really good conversation starter on virtual tabletop stuff. I'm not sure, Rob, what you've done in that arena yet, but does it make a difference, or would it make a difference to you if in the way that your adventures were structured on whether or not it was a virtual tabletop with specific ways that a game master can interact that they can't do at a real table? Does it make any difference to you as
I don't
far
know.
as the way that your adventures laid out?
I think, like, if I was running Call of Cthulhu on a virtual tabletop, it would be an opportunity for me to present props more easily. But I'm such a Luddite when it comes to that. I've done a few virtual tabletop things. I played The Strange with Bruce and company, and I guess I did. We used to, and when I was working with Wizards, and we would do 5th edition play tests back when it was called D&D Next. We would do it all through G+.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I miss G+. But anyway, yeah. I mean, I guess it would. I still would go with my three rules. What's the thing that's scary? And if there's anything scary there, what's the most obvious thing? I mean, I just think about what human experience is like, right? Where if you go to the grocery store, you're probably not going to remember the person who checked you out in the grocery aisle unless you went to the self-checkout thing. And then you'd probably not recognize one of those self-checkout machines for anybody else, because you're just going through the motions of living. And if you're going into a dangerous place, you're probably not going to notice the fact that the floor is made of slate rather than granite, because you don't give a shit. You're just looking for a thing that's going to kill you. So I just...
Sure.
And as Danny was saying, you let the players guide what information they seek. You can always give more information based on their queries, but keeping enough just to tickle their imagination, to give them a sense of, to immerse them just enough that it drives them to keep asking questions and learn more about their environments. And I think that's where I get in trouble with read aloud text, is that read aloud text doesn't give you the choice.
That's valid. That's probably one of the better arguments that I've heard against it, is that it takes that choice out of the game master's hands. It puts everything right there on paper. That's a really good argument. Yep.
But don't you think, going to Jimmy's point, I'm going to take Jimmy's side in this, and he and I are probably as disparate in our GM styles as you could be, is that it's always an option. If you include it, it's still an option. I fucking throw it out all the time.
That's true. Yeah.
Like Rob said, I look at it always ironically.
I will argue though that if you decide you're going to cook dinner, you have two choices. You can either follow a recipe or make something up based on memory. And if you follow a recipe, you're more likely to follow the recipe to the letter than you are to improvise, unless you're experienced.
Yeah, sure.
So if you're not experienced and then you have a block of read aloud text, you're inclined to do it right. Therefore, you're going to read the whole thing aloud. However, if you say to the reader and say, make this shit up, these are the 3 most important things or 4 most important things about this location, and go from there, that will teach the game master up front to embrace the storytelling side. And that's what I'm arguing for. I'm not trying to be right or wrong. I'm just,
Right. No. And I'm not accusing you of that. And being extemporaneous isn't the point either, right? I mean, you could write down your own notes about what the guy says based on these.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you just, that's what I often do. I look at the little notes and I just make something up on my own.
Well, I promise Rob that we're doing some Halloween games starting here in a couple weeks on both channels, and I will use his format for explaining what the players see as they go through the modules, because we're going to be bringing the Cthulhu mythos in, and so okay, to the D&D games, and so we'll see, and I will make those notes, and from now on, let's see how those run those games, and we'll have it on video, and I'll see if I know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know. So, okay.
Are you using Sandy Peterson's?
Yes, I am. I got the book, and so I'm reading it right now. So I've already told the players we're going to factor it in, and madness is going to ensue inside these locations, and they're called the Haunt for a reason. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So,
Dude, that's awesome. I didn't know you were doing that. That's killer.
Yeah. Brian?
All right, guys. So I've got a handful of tips and tricks of my own that I'll share tonight when it comes to adventure writing. And these aren't necessarily for publishing, just for having fun, right? So if you're a publisher or you want to publish your own stuff, great. You can probably use these too. But for the most part, it's to have fun with your players and allow your players to have fun. So one of the first things that I love to throw out is use of in media res, okay? And this means beginning with action, starting the player characters doing something, not necessarily combat, okay? Although combat works fine. You can have them begin immediately in a fight. They're gonna instantly be excited and having fun, right? But at the same time, I have another adventure where the players get blamed for a coin shaving operation, and they get confronted by the constabulary. That's the beginning of the adventure. Okay? So you want to create tension, you want to create excitement, and you want to get people into the story immediately. And I think that's a strong hint. Rob, do you do anything along those lines?
Oh, yeah. I'm very much of start you in the middle of shit and try to find your way out.
Right.
You are ambushed by bandits. You are trying to build a wall to keep the undead from crashing into your room. You are a fluffer working on a set of a porn movie. Whatever. You've got to do something to kind of keep the players so they have something to do immediately, rather than say, you're in a dark tavern and there is a mysterious man in the corner. He is hatefully masturbating in that corner. And speaking of small puppies. Very
That's
poor.
exactly. Yeah. So speaking of tropes, okay. Oh my God. So I hate tropes. I love them because they're useful and they're powerful. You know, even if you overly abuse a trope, it still works because it's a trope, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, I think in order to make them good, you have to twist them. You have to make them your own. You have to own them. So a great tool is to just mix them up, right? You can take an existing trope or group of tropes and file off the serial numbers, change things around. Suddenly you have something that everyone can get into because they already kind of understand the power of the trope. But now it's your own. So, for example, imagine a quest where a bunch of dwarves have to take a giantish artifact that they've stolen to a volcano and have it destroyed by the breath of an ancient red dragon. Okay? It's all right. It's not the greatest story that ever lived, but it is Lord of the Rings with the serial numbers filed off. It's a thing. You have to take the thing to destroy it, right? You could take any movie that you loved and do exactly that, and suddenly you look like a great game master coming up with this amazing storyline that your players really love. And then later, 10 years later, you can be like, oh, yeah, I totally just ripped that off.
Yeah, I used to start game. I played an Oriental Express game, and I always started it the same way. You felt the tracks giving way about 5 seconds ago, and in the time it took for you to just take action, everybody roll initiative now. Everybody rolls initiative. The bridge was already giving way, and the train is plummeting, and then the game starts. So everybody's got to figure out what they do, and most people do all sorts of crazy shit in situations like that. And the main thing is it doesn't have to be combat.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be a fight, right, Brian? I mean, it can be an encounter. It can be
Absolutely.
Kyle.
Hello? What?
What?
Hello.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's why I like the word encounter so much when that really came into common parlance, because now every time I think about a fight, I think about it like an encounter where a fight might happen, not as a combat encounter or something like that. It's just an encounter. Something could happen, one of which might be a fight.
And then the last thing that I try to always incorporate is think about your players. And that's if you're a game master running something off the cuff. But if you're a publisher, think about all the classes, all the roles, if you will. People play a particular class because they enjoy the things that class can do. Fighters want to fight. Rogues want to sneak. They want to backstab. Clerics want to turn undead. Paladins want to hold back the hordes while their friends rush to safety, right? So, you need to write for the GM and the players. You have to give the players those opportunities to do those cool, amazing things that they want to do so that they can be the heroes of the story.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I agree. I remember flavor text used to be put in for the GM. I don't remember what they were from. I think they're from old TSR modules. They say fighters will enjoy this module because they will get the chance to fight Grognard, the Hill Giant King, and magic users will enjoy the many magical challenges at the tower. And I think that kind of stuff is great. I mean, in terms of like letting people know there's a little bit of something here for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I guess that's a pretty important aspect of adventure design, right? How do you provide things for everybody to do? Is that a consideration? I mean, it is for you, Brian, but I mean, does everybody consider that?
I think it depends on the game. I mean, if you are in a D&D game where there is an expectation that characters are so distinct that you have to cater to the particular place. I mean, I think it's more of a fourth edition mentality where you want to make sure that your striker is going to have an opportunity to do something cool and your leader is going to do something cool as well. But I don't think Cthulhu worries about that so much, right?
Right.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
And now there's Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay because that's the story that you're navigating, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I don't give a lot of consideration, and maybe to a fault in some cases. I don't give a lot of consideration to who's going to be in the group, I think.
I think there's probably going to have to be. I think it's good to think about that, but I think that also could lead to madness.
Sure, don't be a slave to it. Yeah.
In every adventure, you have to make sure that you have at least one history check.
Right.
Somebody decided they want to take history instead of perception for whatever reason.
History fluffers, by the way.
Right.
Fluffers.
I wanted to make
agree. That's what happens.
I wanted to make sure that you knew, Rob, that Stephen outed you and mentioned that before your job as a McDonald's manager that you were a professional fluffer.
I was, but not for what you expect. I was an elephant fluffer at the Baltimore Zoo, trying to make sure that elephants mated. I was favored for my supple wrists and gentle hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
Requested,
yeah.
I heard. Yeah.
Many an elephant was left that scene pleased one way or the other.
Yeah.
And
I can't tell what's truth or fiction anymore.
Yeah, I can't either. He weaves a spellbinding tale.
He does.
I do.
Beth is very happy that her kid went upstairs.
I'm sure.
Yes.
Good plan, Beth. Love you.
Just in case we didn't say it earlier, it is an adult show. We're liable to say, and Rob has really raised that bar. I think. Yeah. I mean, or lowered it.
You brought up milking the prostate yet?
That's true. And right there, we're going to take a quick station ID. We are wizards of the couch. We are here tonight with Rob Schwalb, who is lowering the quality of American discourse even as we speak. I'm joined here tonight with Matt. I'm here joined with Matt, Casey Liff, Jimmy Duffy, and Brian Berg, and Rob Schwalb. We've been talking about adventure design. We've been talking about Shadow of the Demon Lord, a lot of other stuff. It's been really interesting. You can find us everywhere online, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on podcasts too, right, Brian? I keep
Yeah, you find us on Google Play.
right?
You can find us on Spotify. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
When you haven't had enough Taylor Swift, just look for us. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're done listening to the Tool album for the 234th time, please check out our rerun. Oh
God, I'm out of beer.
We've got a Kickstarter going, Matt. Why don't you say a little bit about Kickstarter?
Kickstarter.wizcogames.net. We have 8 days left. We're about 75% of the way there. We're trying to get a $2,000 project launch, and it's the industrialization of magic is kind of the backdrop of this neo-arcane campaign setting. 4 adventures are included, and we could really use your support. I did also want to give a shout out to Beth Damas, who is our newest $5 supporter on Patreon.
That's the joyous.
That's the raise the roof dance.
That's my raise the roof dance. Thank you, Beth Davis.
Hey, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but this Kickstarter, doesn't it have a new class for players as well?
It does.
It does. It does.
Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you for the cattle prod, which I forgot twice.
I was going to say, it doesn't take much for a designer to talk about their game.
Yeah, so one of the classes that were included in the Kickstarter for those that are supporting us, as well as a free PDF later down the road, is the Chemist. The Chemist class, which is essentially a modern-day scientist who uses magic in a scientific sort of way.
Sciencey, way better. Sciencey.
Where's my marker?
To produce effects. Hashtag Sciencey. The Chemist will be included in the Kickstarter for those who are supporting it.
Right on. Yeah, and just one last quick shout out on that Kickstarter, not only in book, not only in PDF, it'll be available on World Anvil. If you don't know what that is, go out and check out worldanvil.net, right? .net?
.com,
worldanvil.com.
And BTTs.
And check it out. It is super cool. It's like that thing that you wished you had when you first started writing games. You'll just have to look at it for yourself. I can't possibly describe it right now, but we will definitely be giving big shouts out there. So,
hold on. Doesn't someone else in this room have a Kickstarter going right now too?
There might be something of that kind of thing going on. Yeah, so I'm running a Kickstarter for Punk Apocalyptic, the role-playing game. It's full of filth and vulgarity, mutants, Fifth Riker, Nazis that you want to kick their ass. It's loaded with great content. It's 192 pages. You can back it now for $20 and get a really fucking cool book.
Yeah, I'll be backing it for sure. There's no doubt about it.
We have 24 days left. Get out there and do your part for my cats, for my artists, for my editor, and my graphics person.
Where can we find it? Where can we find it, Rob?
Kickstarter.com. Look under Punk Apocalyptic, the RPG.
Right on. Punk Apocalyptic, the RPG. Shadows of the Demon Lord is outstanding. The work that Rob has done in other games is likewise so. This is going to be yet another feather in your cap, I'm sure, Rob. And anybody would be fucking lucky to own it. Let's face it.
That's right.
Let's face it.
You should back it because your life depends on it.
Your life depends on it.
That's right. So now we get to Matt's segment. Ta-da! Questions from the couch.
Jimmy, if you can have that into a jingle by next time, it'd be fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah.
We are questions from the couch. We're going to totally shift gears, completely shift gears. In fact, we're just gonna. You ever seen that meme where the old Dodge is like off the highway? Like here's the conversation, and then that's what we're doing right now. All right.
I'm 50. I've seen a meme.
Crickets.
Do you have the crickets? Because I feel like I should be hearing them right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Holy cow. Tough crowd. All right. So why is pay to play becoming a thing is the question for the week. Is it necessary, and is it the next big thing in gaming? I've got my thoughts on this. Jimmy, you're the closest one of us to pay to play. Why don't you take that and tackle it first? What are your thoughts?
In gaming.
yeah.
In game.
Yeah, whatever. Sure.
I won't talk
Gaming.
to a professional fluffer about that.
Professional fluffer and toilet wine manufacturer.
Right, toilet wine aficionado.
I mean, it's basically what I do, is it not? I mean,
Yes.
And I'm not gonna lie.
That's
about
why I said
I know.
you're the closest one.
I know,
All
I know.
right.
But some people don't see that. And we've had comments coming through a couple of the past shows where people would say, and if you were say, I would never pay a DM to run a game, and yet you're on Twitch, and if you're supporting the channels, and it does feel like, I understand it is your support. It's a different feeling there, but if a Patreon or even just tipping, you're giving some money to that. I am not opposed to it all. I do it this platform, so I consider it okay. I mean, I know we've got friends that will travel to go charge and play a game. And if the players are willing to pay for it, and that's an experience that they could continue to pay for, I'm stepping out of the way on it, folks. I don't have a problem with it. I don't. So, if they like my way and they want to bring me over to a party and they want me to DM the game for them, I'm going to do it. So, sure.
Party, huh?
Party.
Is that
The DM party. Yeah, I've never been to one, but I've heard of them. So,
lines of Coke and hookers and everything? All right. Yeah. Danny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I fully support it. It is definitely part of the next wave of gaming. Gaming is going to become entertainment much more than it is now. We're just providing the rule sets for that entertainment largely, and providing interesting content. And when it was interesting before the show, Rob and I were talking, and we discussed like the creating of like some of these things are like events. Like you're creating a whole world for people, and creatives have always had a hard time getting paid because people want to just look at it and move on. They just want to take it and move on. And so we couch this whole industry, and we make rules. We make real hard, crunchy things. So you should pay for it. You're paying for the rules. But the truth is, you should be paying for all of it. And I don't think a writer only has so much reach. GMs everywhere. If you're good at what you do and you can provide somebody with real entertainment and they have a really good time, I don't think it's any different than anything else. In fact, my buddy Tony is down in Chicago right now running D&D games professionally for business people. They want to do something fun and interesting, and they don't want to just do the same old stuff. So he shows up and he runs games. HR departments hire him to go down and run D&D games for people. He gets paid for this. And our hobby has that problem that all hobbies do. When it stops being just a hobby, there's all those people who say, no, kicking and screaming. But truthfully, the audience is dragging it, not us. We can either hold on or let go.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's a couple of good points in the chat too with
Stevens, man.
No issue that some people are going to want to stay amateur, which is fine. I mean, playing the game with your group of friends around your table is never, I don't think, ever the issue, right? It's the people that are putting real work into it that I think is where people are starting to butt heads. And Stephen specifically says one thing to keep in mind: if you're playing at a convention, many times you are paying to play, which is like an aha moment it's got to be an aha moment for a lot of people. You pay for a convention ticket. If you're going to Kobold Con, for example, you're going to pay $50, $65 to get the convention badge. And then sometimes you're going to pay for a ticket to play and sit at that game. You're paying to play right there, right out of the gate. Even if the GM doesn't necessarily get the money, the convention or the company does, but cut out the middleman and give the GM the love was his big point.
Is part of it that there's a shortage of GMs, and maybe people are fearful that if their awesome local GM figures out he can make money, he'll ditch them and go chase the ducats?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there is some of that. To be honest, there's some of the comments. I'll come back around to this. Brian, what's your thought?
I've got a few. First of all, I mean, you guys all hit it right on the head. I mean, game mastering is an art form, and you are providing entertainment for others, right? How many of you guys have went with a date to watch a movie, then bought popcorn and walked out $60 poorer and went, fuck, that was a shitty movie. Why did I pay for that, right? You're telling me that you'd willingly and happily pay $60 for a fucking movie and make the same mistake over and over and over when you wouldn't pay $5 or $10 to have someone invest hours and hours of their time to run and have a game prepared for you so you can have enjoyment? That's just horrible if you wouldn't, right? Like, I get that people feel like, hey, in my close group, I wouldn't pay my regular game master, okay? Because we're all friends, right? Of course not, right?
Right.
But you technically are paying because you are providing enjoyment in return to the game master. He gets something out of it. He's not doing it entirely of his, because he has to, right? You didn't hire him to do that. He's getting something out of it. If I was a mercenary game master and I said, okay, Friday night, I have a 4-hour block. I'm going to try and make a little extra money. I don't know these people, right? They're not my close personal buddies. However, I might become great friends with them. That's a whole other topic. But I'm going to provide them with entertainment. I am going to do the best job I can as a game master. It's an art, right? I think they deserve to get paid. Absolutely, 100%. People are just jealous.
And what the market will bear,
good.
too. What the market will bear. What people want to pay.
Sure.
I think anything I say will be negative. So I should probably pass.
No, do it. Do it.
No.
You have opposing opinion.
Rough us up.
Here's the thing. You can't play D&D without one of the players taking on the role of Dungeon Master. You can't play any role-playing game without one of these people doing it. So because you're the most charismatic asshole in the room and you're the best at telling stories, you deserve to take money out of the other people's pockets because you're playing the game and having just as much fucking fun as they are. I think that's kind of a load of shit. I also think that it also devalues the work the designers put into these games to make it easier for anybody else to do these things. Now, a convention is different because a convention is an event, and the convention is going to recoup the cost of hosting the event by charging tickets to do these things. So I don't know that the convention is the same kind of thing. I think that somebody who wants to become a professional dungeon master, good on you, man. You're just finding an angle, and you're going to milk this thing until no one decides they're going to pay you anymore because they can do the same fucking thing you can because all the tools are the same. And the only thing that separates you from the other assholes is the fact that you're the first person who thought of it. Now, I don't want to say that this is pretty – I mean, I don't know. People have said to me in the past, you should charge something for running the game. It's like, well, what am I doing, right? I'm having just as much fun as these other people, and I enjoy entertaining other people, and I enjoy being part of their story. Why should I get rewards beyond what is part of the social contract of our fucking hobby? It just seems it's just weird to me. But I mean, hats off to you, man. I know all sorts of people who always have a fucking angle. It's like, I bet if I can make dice out of my own semen, I bet I could find somebody to pay for it. And it's like, maybe you could. Go for it. But I mean, for now, it's like, you don't have to run a Twitch stream or do anything. It's good for the hobby to get more people involved. But man, if you just want to pick up a buy the essential starter kit or whatever the fuck you want to do, run your game and have a good time. Don't be looking for someone to fill your pockets and pay for your college or your alcohol habit because, you just happen to be good at putting two words together. That's what I'm just saying, which means I'm an asshole. But,
no. It's just it's your opinion, man, and it's very valid. Yeah.
You represent, I would say, better than 50% of people.
He does.
Easily. Probably better than 75% of people.
He does.
I guess the only thing I say to all those things is it's an option, right? So the fear I think a lot of people have is it's going to push out free gaming, but I don't think free gaming will ever be pushed out. Like that's going to be always the model.
The one thing I will say that's good about this, when people start charging to run games, is that it should, in theory, drive other people to start running their own games for free.
Fair enough. Yes.
And by doing so, that means that creates another generation. Because the biggest thing that tabletop role-playing games have as a problem is getting people willing to run.
Yes.
And I think the reward should be, there are other ways I think we can reward people who are willing to make the investment of time and effort and labor and all that stuff than just milking their fans or their friends for their hard-earned shekels. But rather, there should be some sort of other arrangement where maybe the players say, we're going to have a collective pile of books, or we buy books for the game master, or we buy the adventures for the game master.
Well, now you're hitting on the more practical aspect of it, which is all that stuff's great, but the fucking GM gets screwed. You buy all the shit, you buy all the figs, you provide dice for people, and every GM I've ever been at, when he gives me dice at his table, like I forgot mine, he never asks for those dice back. It's just a gift. You know what I mean? Here you go, take them. You know, so GMs by nature are very generous, but I think they're at some level. I feel like they're getting fucked. Like, and I don't like it.
So my rule, kids at home, is that whenever you go to a game, if your dungeon master, referee, whatever, is an alkie, always bring your dungeon master a 6-pack of beer. Always.
Right.
My players, I'm looking at you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no shit.
Especially if the game master's hosting after hours. Just
I think. Yeah. So, do we have any more time for this comment, Matt? Or are we out?
I think we're
We're over, but I mean, it's going pretty strong.
I was just gonna say, there's this aspect now that, and I don't know if it's true or not, that it's an experience. So when people come to my game, I have audio, visual. I do extra. Does that change that argument at all? I mean, I understand if you're running a book straight game, there's a few minis on the table, and you're just playing amongst friends, that's fine. But if I'm going to create, like we do this thing at Gen Con where we set up this whole fucking room and there's AV and it's a plane crashing and it's nuts. You know, we charge money for that. And I never think that that's inappropriate. It is covered in my liquor tab, quite frankly, and a little bit of my hotel, you know, so I don't feel too bad about it, but I don't think I could charge a local group. You know, I think conventions are different.
Yeah. I've been doing this for almost 17 years and I've never charged anybody I'll go to shows and I get, compensated for going to the show, but I never ask anybody to pay me for running games.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think just
fair enough.
Rob, the next time I see you at a convention, I will buy you some beer and you will get paid for running games.
All right. Well, I'll also take a dry hand job.
Also, I don't even know what that looks like. Paid.
I didn't need that visual. I didn't need that visual.
No, I didn't mean that, but that's good.
Hey, as Rob mentioned,
Cajun rub. That's all you have to do.
As Rob mentioned, he just puts out the bullet points. It's up to us to imagine the scene.
Yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say I don't even understand what that looks like, that pay to play model, because local gaming stores don't want you to do that there unless they want the money. So you don't have a venue there. Where do you even have a venue to do it unless you're doing it one at a timing? Maybe you run 3 games a week. You can't make a fucking living at that. You'd have to be charging like $700 a game.
I will say that I did do a deal where I was doing some consulting work for a software company, and they offered to pay me to come out and teach them how to play D&D. And I did that for a while. But that's different.
Yeah, it's a business job.
It's totally different from like, hey, I'm selling my services to be your game master. Just find a fucking group, dude. It's like, just go. Now, if you're putting out money to do an event at a convention, that's different. But if you're just like, I really feel like not going to McDonald's for 2 shifts this week, and instead, I'm gonna and working with Rob. I don't want to Rob because that's my next career or my return to. Unless you back the Kickstarter, kids.
Yep. Hey, this is the real reason you need to back this Kickstarter. Punk Apocalyptica will definitely keep Rob from working at a fucking McDonald's.
Right.
Hey,
or
Rob.
from providing dry hand jobs.
Yes, Rob, I'm going to challenge you to throw 2 golden arches in one of your adventures at some point. Any point,
It'll happen.
please.
It'll happen.
Okay, well, so let's see where we at on time. We're running over. I think we're
did good.
That was real good. I just want to say, closing out this session, I don't think I've laughed this hard during a show to date. Rob, thank you so much for being with us here tonight. You were great, terrible, but great. And I send me some toilet wine. I hear you're going to get that boxed up as a Shadow of the Demon Lord vintage.
Yep. I'm just looking for old tube socks.
Okay, good. That are not used, right? Is that what you said? Something?
No. It depends on how they're used.
Okay.
The flavor they give. There's a Napa Valley and the Sonoma Valley tube sock. The Sonoma Valley tube sock is worn. The Napa Valley is used.
So on that depressing and discouraging note, I think Rob told us himself that he would always tell us what the most worrying thing in the room was immediately upon entering it. It would definitely be his boxed toilet wine. So anyway, we are Wizards of the Couch. Casey, Brian, Jimmy, our awesome guest, Rob Schwalb.
Yep.
There we go. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Rob.
everybody. We'll see you.
Got it.